This video is sponsored by Flying Eyes. I'll tell you more about them later in the show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. And today we are here in the garage out back of AF1 Racing, and we have a fun experiment we are going to do. Everybody keeps telling me that when you get yourself a slip-on exhaust for your motorcycle, it's suddenly going to turn into a completely different bike. It's going to be a whole bunch faster. It's going to feel so much better. But I have a feeling that's just the butt dyno effect. And so today, AF1 has volunteered some dyno time. We are going to test how much power this bike is making. Then we are going to install this Competition Works slip-on exhaust that does not remove the butterfly valve. And we're going to run it again on the dyno to see exactly what the change is. And today, we are going to have numbers to back up our facts. So, all you guys in the comments who are ready to say that we did something wrong, let's go numbers for numbers, shall we? Let's dive in. This is going to be a good one. Now guys, here's how this is going to work. Right after I finish this piece to camera, we are going to take this motorcycle out back. We are going to run it up on the dyno and figure out exactly how much horsepower this thing is making stock. Then we're going to let it cool down. We're going to bring it back in here and we're going to install this Works exhaust. It's literally just 2 bolts. It does not get simpler than installing a slip-on. And we're going to spin it back up on the dyno, see what the actual numbers say, and then we're going to take it out for a ride because sometimes the butt dyno effect really does make the difference, and we're going to have the numbers to back it up. Not only that, we are actually going to ask some of the frequently asked questions that I see all the time when it comes to tuning motorcycles, exhausts, making more power. I've actually roped in the dyno tech to answer some questions for you because I know there's going to be a few out there. Let's dive on into this one.
There's a ton of myths or misconceptions about swapping exhausts, from them adding a bunch of power outright or that they could change your bike with just a few quick tweaks. But to get some real details, let's hear from our expert.
Well, my name's Brent Davidson. Been here at AF1 since 2011. Been in the industry for over almost 21 years now. Just a full-on tech, Ducati, Aprilia, all the European stuff. So doing it all.
The first thing I see in the comments section is something like this. I've just swapped my exhaust and I need to get a custom tune. But do you really?
So, in my opinion, when you start changing the airflow of the bike, like the exhaust, the intakes, the air filters and all that, if you do it at a drastic enough to where the bike where you need to match the fuel to the airflow, that's typically when you need to start doing some tuning and some fueling changes to try to match that air change you make. A slip-on probably won't change much. Airbox, so we have some kits that we do where we actually change the intake runners and stuff. That makes a pretty good size difference where we need to add some more fuel to it or, change it up a little bit. The biggest problem we find nowadays is, the emission stuff, open loop and closed loop. You can do anything to a bike that's in closed loop and the bike doesn't care, it'll change it right back to where it was at. We fight that quite a bit nowadays.
Now the claim numbers for Ducati for the 2013 Hyperstrada are 110 horsepower and 66 foot-pounds of torque. However, outlets like Cycle World often run bikes on their dyno and find lower numbers. So what accounts for the difference?
Usually the numbers that you see, like in the magazines and all that, are typically not rear wheel horsepower. A lot of times it'll be off crankshaft that they do at the factory. It's rare to see actual rear wheel horsepower in any sort of advertisement because the crankshaft horsepower is usually 10-15% higher than what it would be at the rear wheel.
And what does Brent think we're going to see for the stock Hyperstrada?
Bone stock on this dyno? This dyno reads probably about 20% lower than like a Dynojet would. I'd say 80, 85 at the wheel would be probably my guess.
Now before we spin the bike up, let me tell you about Flying Eyes real quick. They're my choice of sunglasses because they're designed to fit under your helmet with no pressure points. I just did a 2,500 mile cross-country road trip with them on my face for upwards of 8 hours at a time with no discomfort. They've got a bunch of lens colors and frame styles that are backed by a warranty, so if you manage to break one of their frames, they've got you covered. Get a pair with 10% off by clicking that link down in the description below and using the code SPIKE. Thanks to Flying Eyes for sponsoring this video, and now let's see how much power this thing makes.
All right, folks, we are still here in the dyno room. Fresh numbers right off the screen. We have 86.67 as our peak horsepower and 52.99, so 53 foot-pounds of torque. Now, those are just a little bit lower than what Ducati claims. Now, the real reason they're so low is because of the correction factor that's on this dyno. Some dynos might read higher, some dynos might be reading lower. They're all gonna read just a little bit different. You're never gonna find the exact right power. There's also a lot of variables in here that you gotta consider. Stuff like your tires, stuff like your final drive. All kinds of stuff can sap power going from the crank to the wheel. So just consider that while you're out there searching for those magic numbers. Now, let's get the Competition Works exhaust on here, spin it back up, and see if we're finally making some real numbers.
For anyone wondering at home, a slip-on exhaust is about the easiest modification you can do to your bike. I've done well over a dozen at this point, and it's never more than a few bolts to get the job done. On the Hyper, we're only looking at 2. But I know some of you are asking, what about the butterfly valve? Won't that sap power?
Not exactly. This thing is only closed during certain speeds at certain RPMs to regulate noise. This has nothing to do with back pressure. 9 times out of 10, it's just sitting open. So there's really nothing stopping me from getting as much power as I want with just that little pipe in there. So let's get the Competition Works on there, run it back up.
Now, one last piece of advice is don't forget to clean your pipe before you run your bike. Otherwise, you're going to burn your fingerprints into the metal. A quick minute cleaning your pipe can make it look way better down the line. With that done though, let's see what Brent thinks we're going to see out of this bike with the new pipe on there.
To be honest with you, you probably won't see any difference. So it's gonna be noisier, but that's about it. I mean, sometimes it can make a negative difference. So, because you're gonna lose a little bit of back pressure and stuff. Changing the exhaust and stuff like that, I mean, I think the most I've ever seen with like big changes with stock internals besides cams and stuff like that would maybe be a 10 horsepower gain at the top end, so.
Now those are some bold words. If he's right, I may have wasted $500 on this exhaust. Let's spin it up and find out.
Alrighty guys, we have the bike off the dyno and we have some very fun numbers because we did not just run this thing in sport mode and high power mode. We tested it in a couple of different ways and we have some really unique information about this bike. So before we ran this thing with the stock exhaust, this was making about 86.5 horsepower. And with the slip-on exhaust, I think I called it right. We made about 139 horsepower. No, I'm kidding. We made 85.5, so we actually lost power here. With that being said, it is time to get this thing out for some of the more subjective feels on this thing. Let's go see whether or not I can actually tell the difference in that drop in power.
Alrighty, let's see how this thing feels on a twisty road when we're going through the gears. So the first thing I noticed immediately, because I was stuck behind some traffic coming in, is below 3,000 RPM, it's not very happy. Now, it was never very happy to begin with down there. I think that's something that possibly a tune can sort out. But it's not real pleasant sitting down that low. However, everywhere else, rolling on the power is a lot smoother. Now, but dyno, do I feel like I've lost power? At the top, no, it really doesn't. But again, because it's feeling smoother, it's like it's fooling my idiot brain into being like, yeah, dude, you feel less potent. Oh, there's still a lot of torque on tap with this motorcycle. 55 foot-pounds at the wheel, or whatever it was. Yeah, that's still a pretty good number. Does it feel lighter? No, it certainly doesn't. And do I like the sound? You know what? I'm not entirely sure yet. Maybe it'll grow on me, but there is a little bit in there. And maybe it's the 821, maybe it's the pipe, but part of it sounds a little bit like a 180-degree parallel twin, I'm not gonna lie. Like right there, it has just a hint of what a 180-degree parallel twin sounds like. I know it's not. It's a 90-degree V-twin, but still, I don't know that I'm really in love with the sound on this thing. Oh, I do like the mid-range sound, and I love the over-rev sound whenever it's coming down. Yeah, that's a good sound right there. And that's more around where I ride anyway. Alright, now let's start wrapping up some of my thoughts on this whole process, because I actually have quite a few of them. So, first of all, let's ask the big question. Was this worth it? Well, it depends on what your goal is. If you're looking for more power, the answer is no. It's absolutely not worth it. Chances are your bike is going to be a lot like mine, and you will lose top-end horsepower because you don't have back pressure. That's something that's super duper important. And unless you're going to spend a bunch of money on a tuning solution and all of that good stuff, there really isn't a lot of point in chasing power from an exhaust. Now, if all you're looking for is some aesthetic horsepower and maybe a little bit of extra sound, then sure. However, I would caution you to think about the kind of riding that you're going to do. A lot of people I know, and have seen this happen firsthand, is you go and get yourself a really fancy SC Project exhaust. And I have nothing against SC Project. In fact, I've had them on, I had one on my VFR. I've installed probably half a dozen different SC Project pipes on everything from beginner bikes to flagship leader bikes. However, they can be so loud, like, oh my god loud, and they have no way to baffle it. Sometimes they come with a baffle, sometimes they don't. So think about the kind of riding that you're going to be doing, and does it make sense for you to have this screaming banshee of a motorcycle, or are you served by a slightly less aggressive one? I think for most people who are just doing street riding on a modern motorcycle, I wouldn't get anything that deletes the cat, to be honest. Not only will you be managing the sound a little bit better, but you're also going to keep the smell down because, you know, the exhaust is stanky. So that's something to consider. And then the last thing is price. Is all of this worth the $500 I spent on a nice slip-on exhaust? Probably not. I don't think I would do it again. But that's just me. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below, and I'm gonna go all Glenn Fricker on you with this one and say I don't want to hear a bunch of secondhand nonsense about pipes adding power. Maybe your bike is special, that's great, but until you have the dyno numbers pre and post, I think we've definitively proved here today that slip-ons are not going to add a whole bunch of power. They're not going to transform your riding experience. They might improve a few minor things here and there, like your throttle feel, but otherwise, it's just about noise and looks, baby. A huge shout out to AF1 for setting all this up. I could not have filmed this video without them opening their dyno to me and getting me set up with all of this stuff. It has been a heck of a learning experience, and you know what? If you can find some time to run your bike on the dyno, it might be kind of elucidating. I sure feel like my bike is acting differently now that I know it's only making about 85.5 horsepower. I was sitting here thinking 115. With that, guys, I will catch you guys in the next one. I'll see you later.